Hey guys, and welcome to this edition of Scruff's Garage. So today we're back in the garage with my Jeep Gladiator, and one of the projects I've been wanting to do since I put the lift kit and tires and wheels on to finish the look and make it more capable off-road, I've been wanting to replace the stock Overland bumper, which has these silver trim pieces. Wanted to get rid of all of that and go with a nice heavy-duty bumper. So that's what we're working on today. I decided to go with this bumper from Rugged Ridge. So it's their heavy-duty, full-width bumper. Bumpers are a lot like wheels. There are a ton of options and personal preference. Some people like the stubby bumpers. I personally decided I wanted the full width, but that's completely up to you. There's no right or wrong answer there. If you plan to run a winch like I am, make sure you select a bumper that has a built-in winch plate. That'll make mounting a winch a lot easier and simpler for you. As for the winch, I decided to go with this unit. This is the Apex Badlands. This is the one you can get from Harbor Freight. Both of these items were on sale recently here at the end of the year, so I decided this was the right time to get everything. This is a 12,000 pound winch. It has the synthetic winch cable, wireless remote. I've already taken it out of the box. It is a very heavy winch, so it seems to be built well. I've read a lot of good reviews on it, so hopefully I have the same positive experience. So let's get into the installation. I don't think it'll be too terribly difficult. Some of these items are a little heavier. I'm working by myself today, but certainly if you have someone to help you, that will make lining up some of these items a little bit easier. So let's jump into the installation. Okay, we're working on taking off the front bumper. So there's this front filler plate. These are just basic push pins. So a little flathead screwdriver and maybe some needle nose pliers. You can pry those out. Still attached to the bumper, but that's okay. This will come off as one piece. I have the LED lighting package. So we need to disconnect the front fog lights. You just press in on the tab here, maybe a screwdriver or something like that. Push in, and then this piece pulls out. So we'll need that disconnected. There's also the lower, don't really want to call this a skid plate because this one's just the plastic, but if it were a Rubicon, this would be a metal skid plate. But it's connected down here, so there are a couple little bolts down there. We'll need to get those out as well, and then we'll move on to the main mounting bolts for the bumper. So we'll keep moving. Okay, under the bumper there are these two bolts here. The nuts are 18 millimeter. They need to be removed. Okay, I lied. That trim panel does have to come out. There are just yeah, along here, just more of those push clips. Like these, a little flathead. And you can pry those out. And then there are a total of 8 of the 18 millimeter nuts that actually hold the bumper on. So 2 you can get to from the outside of the frame rail, you know, 2 there, 2 there, and then on the inside there are 2 and 2, so 2, 4, 6, 8. These I could get to with an electric impact. These are obviously inside the frame rail. So you just have to use a half-inch drive with an 18 millimeter. They're really not on there that tight, so you can certainly do it by hand. It just takes a second. So at this point, we're ready to take the bumper off. There we go. So there's a different look at the studs that those 18 millimeter nuts go on, and that's how they mount to the frame. All right, let's move on getting our new bumper installed. Okay, so the next step, I'll roll the bumper back here a little bit. We need to get the fog lights out because they will mount in brackets into the new bumper. Now the sport bumpers I believe, are a little different. I don't think they have this closeout panel, but I have the Overland, which seals in the fog lights. So all of these, right, are just the little standard push pin trim retaining clips that you're accustomed to. And then that wasn't enough to get this completely loose, so I had to go ahead and take the skid plate off with this plastic skid plate. So this is held on, okay, where you can see it. So through all of these, it's a slightly different push pin, but it works the same way. It's a little tricky because they're kind of recessed into these pockets. I used a tool like this, so you can kind of flip this around, kind of get in there, and you can pull them out that way. So those little teeth are helpful. So this worked out really well. There's some trim removal tools that are made specifically to do that. They'll even take out these that'll come through and pinch on both sides, and you can pull straight out. I don't have one of those, but maybe I will add it to my arsenal of tools. But anyway, so we got this removed, and now there we go. So we will unbolt the fog light, and we'll fish out the wiring as well. I believe we're going to need that, and we'll do that for both sides, and then we'll have that part done. Okay, so we need to get our wiring harness for the fog lights out, right? Because zipping out the little screws that hold the fog lights in, that's easy, but then we need the wiring harness. So this metal bumper here fits inside of here, and it's held on by these 13mm nuts. So there are 2, 4, 6, 8 of them, and that just lifts out. That's real easy. Then the wiring harness, as you can see, has all these little Christmas tree friction clips, and it's held like there, 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 and there. I suppose you could take apart the bumper and pull those clips out from the front. I didn't want to do that. Maybe it would have been easier, it's hard to say. So I used a hammer and a punch to push those clips backwards all the way down. Not too terribly difficult. And then you need to fish out this wiring harness. It will pull out from this side going this way. It's probably easier because you got the larger connector down on this side. I'm not sure it would go out the other way. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt because these clips get hung up everywhere. You might be able, maybe you could have cut them off. I'm not sure if I could get to them. That maybe would have made it easier. If you just mess with it for a bit though, you can get that wiring harness snaked out. So now we move on to this bumper. So two things. So one, walk over here. I have the overrider bar. So that will mount on top. So they suggest mounting that first, because once you put it on the vehicle, you're going to have a hard time getting to those mounting points for the overrider bar. And then we'll also mount our fog lights. There's some brackets that are included since I have the LED fog lights. And just a note, the fog lights go this way. I believe that's how they came out, with the silver piece up at the top. So we'll have to make sure we get those positioned properly when we put them in here. Don't want to install the fog lights upside down. So we're making progress. Okay, we'll move on to mounting the overrider bar. Pretty straightforward. This comes with its own bracket, and there's an Allen head bolt and washer. So just kind of thread all this together, and they say go ahead and tighten this. There's an additional bracket that will mount here, but that goes on after we mount the bumper on the vehicle. It will help tie into the frame. And of course the same thing over here. Okay, I've got the LED fog lights mounted. Reading through the instructions, they provide these brackets. There's 2 of them, and they note it's for the JL with LED lights, LED fog lights. Obviously I'm installing on a Gladiator, but I have the LED lights, but I did not need the included bracket. Mine mounted up no problem. They provide these little tiny carriage bolts. Make sure you've got a little 7mm socket. These are obviously very small, but they just slide in and bolt together. So pretty simple. All right, we'll move on to the next step of the installation. Okay, now it's time to mount the bumper. We're going to do so loosely. Make sure you've got these little slip washers in place. It helps hold these mounting bolts in place, make lining up the bumper on the vehicle a lot easier. Then you're going to use your mounting hardware. You can see these 3 will take the nuts, and then that one up there takes a bolt. And make sure you use the big flat washers and the lock washer as well. And right now it's just going to be loosely installed. That way we have space to get to the winch, which we'll do next. Okay, so I've got the bumper loosely mounted. They don't call it out in the instructions, but there are these like frame tie-in brackets that fit on each side of the frame rail. So it would have gone from a bolt here to here, and the same thing on each side of the frame rail. They don't specifically say to remove them, but there's no way these tie-in brackets are going to fit with those in place. So there are these 2 brackets. They're shaped differently, but there's a driver's side and a passenger side that tie into the back of the winch plate. That way when there's a load on this, it's also tied in to the frame. So all this is just loosely mounted at the moment. Same thing over here. So there are these brackets that come with the overrider bar. So they tie in here on the side. So there'll be 2 nuts up here, and then they tie into the main mounting over here. Again, there was the frame tie-in bracket I was talking about. So you have to loosen this bolt, and you can take off these brackets. And same thing on the passenger side as well. So the next step is to see if I can get the winch to drop in through here. If I can't, I'm going to have to figure out something else of how to get this winch in there. But we'll keep moving. But I'm excited. I think it's going to look really good. But I'm anxious to get this finished. Okay, so an update. I've got the winch lightly dropped in. So the issue I was having with the wiring coming out the back, it was hitting the grill, and with the overrider bar installed, there wasn't enough room to like slide it in. Now if you didn't have the overrider bar, it probably would have just dropped in, no issue. However, you have to install the overrider bar first, because to get to the bolts, right, the bolts come out through here. Well, there's your frame rail, so there's absolutely no clearance to get back to this afterwards. Now, I suppose you could mount the winch in the bumper off of the Jeep and then put the whole unit on there together. However, that's extremely heavy, and working by yourself probably wasn't going to be feasible for me to be able to do. Even with 2 people, that seems like could be a bit of a challenge. So my remedy, I removed, see the grill over there, I took the grill off, and this grill comes off really easy. If you saw the video I did on installing the black grill inserts, I showed this process in a little more detail, but it's just push clips, right? Everything on this whole Jeep is held together with just like the little push clips. So there's I don't know, 6 or so, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 along the top, and then down at the bottom it's just metal push pin. So be gentle with it, but you just pull on the bottom and you'll get one side to pop out, and you can kind of work it along, and then the whole thing lifts off in one piece. Right, so there's the grill. I'm sure it's crazy dark back here. So that gave me more clearance to drop this in. You can hold it, right, when lifting it by this handle. This side can be really tight if you're trying to put your fingers in it. So I used I don't have it sitting over here anymore, just a piece of a strap to loop under it, like a ratchet strap, just the strap piece of it, and then I could hold it by the strap and lower it down in there, and that seemed to work out a little better, so I didn't pinch my hand between the winch and the bumper. So we're going to keep moving forward, going to get the winch tightened down, figure out exactly how I want to run the winch cables. This line is pre-installed, that's the positive. The negative is down here. Make sure you install that before you slide it in place. It'd be much more difficult to get to. And then we're going to route everything to the battery. So we're making progress and figuring things out as we go. So stay tuned. Okay, status update. So even taking the grill off and putting the winch in and then putting the grill back in afterwards, it is a very, very tight fit. You can see the positive wire coming out of the back of the winch control panel, control box, whatever you want to call it. It is a very, very snug fit. I'm not sure if I'm happy with that. It's not something I can address tonight. I need to finish getting it installed. One tip, make sure you mount your fair lead before you put the winch in place. Otherwise, obviously there's no clearance in there to get a wrench in there to hold the nut on the back of the fair lead bolts. So make sure you mount that first, then do the winch. And make sure you've got the winch cable pointed out through the fair lead. I've routed the cables up. I don't know if you're going to be see down in there or not, but I've routed the power cable. He's just loose at the moment, but he's going to tie in here. There's an unused unused terminal on the positive side, and then the negative I've routed up. He's going to tie in here to the negative terminal. Actually, getting the cable routed the way I was happy with, it's one of the things that took the longest. Just no room to get your hands in there to route things. But otherwise, I think it's fairly clean. So I'm progressing on. Now it's time to tighten all of the frame mounting bolts for the bumper. We'll start with the main mounting bolts for the that tie it into the frame, and then there are the winch plate bolts in the background. We'll get to those afterwards. So that's what I'm working on now. Okay, a quick look from the underside. Obviously, you'll need to go under here and tighten the frame bolts. These are the back of the winch plate bolts. So there's a frame mount there, and then to the winch plate. Same thing over here. And then, of course, those are the bolts that actually mount the winch to the bumper, to the winch plate. Take a look at your wiring. Make sure nothing's going to rub. It's very tight clearances back there. Same thing in the engine bay. You'll probably want to go through with some zip ties and make sure nothing's going to rub a serpentine belt or something like that. Keep everything out of the way. Obviously, the fog lights mount closer together, so you have some excess wiring harness. I just took some zip ties, kind of looped it together, and then zip tied it, and then zip tied it to the bumper. That way the wiring harness isn't dangling. And then of course, make sure you plug in your fog lights back to the factory plug. It's a fairly snug connection, but I guess it reaches. So there we go. So at this point, all I have to do is connect the positive and negative leads to the battery, and then the winch should work. One other tip: before you start tightening all the mounting bolts, take some measurements and see how much the gap is on this side versus the passenger side. You'll want to try to get those as even as possible. That way the bumper doesn't look crooked from a distance. So one final note, so you see this is the overrider bracket. See if I can get some light on it. Those are the two studs that come through and tighten to that bracket. They provide these nylon lock nuts. They should be an M8 by 1.25, and I've got a bunch of assorted nuts, so I confirmed that that's what this nut is. It's an M8 by 1.25. However, none of the nuts they supplied, nor any of the nuts that I have in my parts bin that are confirmed in M8 by 1.25 match the threads on the studs or whatever is sticking out there. So I don't know what they've got on there, but it's not M8 by 1.25. And so I may contact them and see what they suggest, but you can immediately feel it start to cross thread when you try to put it on there. So that's kind of disappointing. It's annoying when hardware doesn't match. Okay, so I had mentioned when I was taking out the grill and the lower plastic splash guard, they're all held in by these little push pin clips that are really common all over the Jeep. And I mentioned there are some push pin pliers. I didn't have them at the time, but I decided to go back and order some because it's so common on the Jeep. I figure I'm going to use these fairly often. So I thought I would just show you what they look like. So you can see they're just a slightly angle cut tip on the pliers. And then of course you've got the push pin. So as you, right, just pops it open. Right, makes it really simple. And then you also have these like a push pin pry bar, I guess, if you will. But then, so obviously once you pop this up, you can slide in with this from the side and pop it up and actually pull the fastener out. And this was, I don't know, $6, $7. And then these were maybe $11 or $12. Gear Wrench and Lau make some as well, but they're in the like $20, $25, $30 range. And I think these are going to do everything I want to do, and for less than half the price. So I'll leave a link to both of these in the episode notes. So if you're working on your Jeep fairly often and you're dealing with these push pins, then the push pin pliers and a little pry bar may be worth spending, $20 or something on. One thing I wanted to document, since we are going to be adding a fair amount of weight to the front end, obviously the factory bumper is plastic and it doesn't weigh that much, whereas the bumper that I'm going on with is metal, and obviously the additional weight of the winch I anticipate is going to load the front end a bit more. So I put a piece of tape here on the front fender, and it's right at 7.5 inches from the top of the tire. So I've got my mark here, and we'll compare after we get the new bumper and the winch installed and see, did it drop the front end that much. I'm curious. If you haven't seen my past videos, I've got the Rusty's Off-Road. They're 2-inch lift, from which I got 2.5 inches of lift in the front and 1.5 inches in the rear, and it left me with 1 inch of rake, with the back being higher, which I've been really happy with. So I'm curious to see, will this have any impact on the front rad height? Okay, so we'll take an after measurement. We've got the bumper and the winch, everything installed. Let's measure again. So we were 7.5 to begin with. We're a little over 7.25, a little less. So front end dropped maybe 3/16 in the front with the weight of the bumper and the winch, which is not too bad. I'm not sure that will be visibly noticeable from a side profile. I'll check it out tomorrow. The sun's gone down at this point. Okay, so I wasn't content with how close the power cable was. It was pinched between the back of the winch and the grill of the Jeep, and I didn't like that, so I wanted to relocate it. Right now, it's hard to see. It comes out this hole here. I've already pulled it out, but it would come through here and connect to that terminal there. My goal is to relocate it, so instead of coming this way, it will come straight out, which would be through the side of this case, and we'll have to drill a hole. I would highly recommend pulling all this stuff apart while it's not mounted to the Jeep. Once it's on here, it makes getting to everything exceptionally more difficult. But this cover comes off. There are instructions in the little owner's manual for the winch. There are 4 T30 bolts that hold that case on, and then there's the little side cover over here that's held on by 2 T20 torque screws. Then you'll need to disconnect. There are 4 bolts. I'm sorry, 6 that go here and connect to the case. You'll take out those 6 bolts. All pretty straightforward. You'll see it as you take it apart. And then when you flip this over, there are 4, I think these were T30 as well, that go into the bottom of this cover that hold this panel to the bottom of this. And make sure you cover as much stuff as you can. The sharp edges, you can see it scratches really easily. So maybe cover your grill or use some painter's tape to cover up some stuff. So that's what I'm working on. I'll show you some more pictures as I make progress. Okay, so I've almost got it back together. These are the 6 hex nuts I was talking about earlier. You'll need to take those off. And these little brackets, copper brackets or whatever they are, will come out. And that allows you to take this upper case off. So there's the hole that I drilled. I used a stepped drill bit, and I went up to 3/4 of an inch. And that gives you just enough room to get the cable in there, and then you'll have to rebend the end of it so that it connects. The other tip, don't drill it dead center. Even though the stud that it connects to is kind of straight in, there's an angle on the bracket, and that allows you, so you want it offset. Okay, and here's the finished product. So you can see a lot more room between there and the grill. And you can see how it comes out of the side of the case. So my recommendation, especially for the Gladiator and probably the JLs as well, go ahead and relocate this before you install the winch. If I had done that, this would have been a 5-minute project instead of an hour. Things would just be a lot easier to get to. And of course, make sure you disconnect the positive lead before you go taking this apart. Obviously, you don't want power going to it. But other than that, this is pretty straightforward. It comes apart really easily. You're not really modifying anything. You're just kind of relocating and drilling that one hole. Okay, so this is a final walk around just so you can see the bumper and the winch and see how it all turned out. Obviously, mine is the Overland, which would be similar to the Sport as well. As far as the how high the fenders mount. Obviously the Rubicon fenders mount higher, so you'd have more of a gap here. But I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. Actually, I prefer the closer, that the bumper is closer to the fender. I think that looks better. The winch is a very snug fit, but it looks much better now that I relocated the power cable. Really my only complaint, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not. Let's see if we can get in here. Yeah, so if you see the two bolt heads sticking out there, two studs, those are the threaded studs. They are the bracket that goes on the underside that the overrider bar connects to. Whatever threading is on those two studs is incorrect. They supply M8 by 125 nuts. That hardware is not correct. It immediately begins to cross thread. I tried M8 by 1.0 and just see if it was a different thread pitch. That's still not right. I've tried some different standard threads as well, not metric. They didn't line up either. So it may just be incorrectly cut threads on those studs, which is frustrating because that overrider bar isn't cheap. It's not the end of the world, and it's still fairly strong. Obviously, I wouldn't attach a winch line or anything to that. If you double back with a snatch block or something like that, then obviously use you know, a D-ring. Those are going to be much stronger points. These D-rings did not come with the mupper. I bought these separately, just something I got on Amazon. And it's kind of nice. They have a cotter pin on the side so that that bolt doesn't vibrate loose. If you ever had D-rings before, they tend to vibrate loose if you hate to lose one. The other thing that you'll want to do is go somewhere that you can spool out your winch line. Obviously, when it comes to you from the factory, the line is just is wound on there, and it's fairly tight, but it's not wound under tension. So you'd want to run out your winch line to a tree or something, and then put the vehicle maybe in neutral and just lightly set the parking brake or something, and put the vehicle in neutral, and then let the winch pull the line in. Obviously, it would pull the vehicle, and it just puts a little bit of tension on the line as it winds back into the winch. And that way your winch line doesn't slip the next time when you're really out off-roading and you need that winch line. But other than that, I don't have a lower skid plate at the moment. I haven't decided what I want to do there. You do see these sections of the frame that stick down. So I've been researching doing the steel skid plate that comes with on the Rubicon with the plastic bumper. There's a couple of different skid plates. There's a different skid plate that comes with the Rubicons with the steel bumper, and that probably won't work. But the steel bumper that comes, the steel skid plate that comes with the plastic bumper on the Rubicons, I believe I can make that work with this. And of course, Rugged Ridge sells their own lower skid plate as well. So I'm kind of torn between those two to see what I can maybe get a deal on. But other than that, I really like the looks of the bumper. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments. As always, if you hit the like and subscribe button, that means a lot to me. And that way you can stay up to date with whatever project I may be working on the Gladiator or the race car or anything else. So thanks again. We'll see you next time here on Scruff's Garage.